Hello and welcome to another episode of Pick 3 DST, where I give you 3 defenses I like, 1 defense I'm fading, and 1 defense I'm streaming ahead of Week 12 of the NFL season. As a reminder, these are not my full weekly DST rankings. If you want to check those out, you can click the link below, which will take you to the article that I update as the week goes on, and we get weather concerns and injury updates and things of that nature. As always, we're going to start with our accountability check, and it was a pretty solid week for us in our video picks. I did get 6 of the top 10 defenses right in the article, so please remember to check that out. Our stud defense for the week, the New England Patriots, had 6 points in a Thursday night game against the Jets. That's not a great output, but it didn't really hurt you. However, our solid defense, the Falcons, can't seem to play football against the Panthers and scored just 4 points for us. However, we really hit it on our fade, the Vikings, who were a consensus top 10 pick that I had down at 23rd. They had just 3 points. And then the Miami Dolphins, who were outside of the top 20 in consensus, I had up inside the top 10. They finished as the 4th ranked defense on the week with 9 fantasy points. So we'll look to keep that going in Week 12. My sleeper pick of the week is the Chicago Bears. Consensus has them at 12th, but I have them up at 3rd on the week. Over the last 2 months, the Bears ranked 1st in the NFL in turnover rate, 10th in EPA per play allowed, that's expected points added per play allowed, and 11th in opponent scoring rate, and that has led them to average 7.1 fantasy points per game. However, they are going to face a Steelers offense that could be and should be without Aaron Rodgers since he broke his left wrist on Sunday. That would mean Mason Rudolph is going to be under center for the Steelers, and we might have a Steelers offense without Jaylen Warren or with a sub 100% Jaylen Warren since he left Sunday's game with an ankle injury. He claims he's going to play through it, but he might not be at 100%. We don't yet know if Rodgers is going to play, but it's unlikely he's going to play, and so I am going to target a turnover-happy defense playing at home against Mason Rudolph whenever I can. My solid defense for Week 12 is the Baltimore Ravens. Consensus has them at 3rd, and I have them at 4th on the week. Now, this is where I'm going to deviate with my model. My model has the Ravens outside of the top 10, but that's because the Ravens have been an inconsistent defense over the last 2 months. I do think they're getting better of late. They're averaging 9 fantasy points per game over the last month. However, the model also is factoring in that the Jets' offense is giving up just 3 fantasy points per game to opposing defenses over the last month. I know that may surprise people because the Jets are not a really good offense. However, they've been going really run heavy with Justin Fields under center, trying to hide him as a passer. But the Jets are now moving to Tyrod Taylor at quarterback, and I think that's going to be good news for this Ravens defense. That means we're not going to get those run heavy games where Justin Fields was rushing for 11 times a game. Tyrod Taylor is going to drop back to pass a little bit more. That could mean more sacks. That could mean more turnovers, especially since Garrett Wilson remains out of the lineup, and so I'm going to trust the Ravens here going up against the Jets this week. Before I get to my stud defense, pause this video, comment below, let me know which defense you're playing this week, or ask me any start-sit questions, and I'll get to those as the week goes on. My stud defense for the week is the Seattle Seahawks. Consensus has them at 1st, and I have them up at 1st. The Seahawks are 4th in fantasy football over the last 2 months, averaging 8.6 fantasy points per game. Over that same span, they rank 3rd in the NFL in pressure rate, 3rd in opponent scoring rate, 5th in conversion rate allowed, and 8th in EPA per play allowed, and they get a great matchup against the Tennessee Titans. The Titans aren't giving up quite as many fantasy points to opposing defenses as they had been earlier in the season, but they lost all of Calvin Ridley, Alec Iomaner, and Chimere Dike in Sunday's game. We now know that Ridley is out for the rest of the season with a fibula injury. Iomaner is dealing with a hamstring injury and is trending towards not playing this weekend, and Dike has a chest injury and should be able to play this weekend, but we're going to keep an eye on practice reports. But that's really banged up receiver situation for an offense that already is 25th in the NFL in turnover rate, 31st in scoring rate, and 31st in sack rate. So I think this could be a smash spot for the Seahawks this week. The defense I'm fading for this week is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Consensus has them at 8th, but I have them down at 19th on the week. Now, the reason I'm fading the Steelers is the same reason I faded the Vikings last week. It's the Chicago Bears. This Bears offense is second in the NFL in turnover rate, sixth in the NFL in scoring rate, and sixth in the NFL in sack rate. They give up just 2.7 fantasy points per game to opposing defenses. This is not a matchup that I want to target, and so I would have been down on the Steelers anyway, but if they're going to also start Mason Rudolph at quarterback, that could put the defense in some short field position situations and lead to easier points for the Bears, and so I'd be trying to find another defense than the Pittsburgh Steelers this week. Lastly, we'll end with my streamer pick of the week, which was a recommendation on Reddit to focus on one low roster defense every single week. And so my streamer of the week is the New Orleans Saints. Consensus has them ranked at 20th, but I have them up at 10th on the week. The Saints are just 2% rostered in Yahoo formats, but they get a good matchup against the Falcons this week. The Falcons are going to be without Michael Penix Jr., who's likely out for the remainder of the season with a knee injury, and the Falcons are also going to be without Drake London, who suffered a PCL sprain last week and is now week to week and unlikely to play this weekend. The Saints, over the last 2 months, are 5th in the NFL in turnover rate and 11th in EPA per play allowed, so they've been a solid enough defense. They're coming off a bye with time to prepare, and they're going to see Kirk Cousins under center, and Cousins did not look good when he started for Penix earlier this season, and so I do expect the Saints to show up here. I think they could sneak into the top 10, and I would play them over the Falcons, who are ranked ahead of the Saints in consensus rankings. That's going to do it this week for Pick 3 DST. As a reminder, click the link below to get my article, which I'll update as the week goes on. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get Pick 3 DST every week, plus the rest of our football content and fantasy football content over at NBC Sports.